It's that the saying of it carries a transmission of some
Mm-hmm.
kind, which you could say is transferential, and why psychoanalysis understands language and communication, and makes it the locus of the analytic experience, is because it is, it's transferential. And I think that's also what's happening here in this Hamlet on the Ganges, because we know it means Hamlet when it says gangāyām ghosah, because what else would be by a riverbank, except a structure. But when we say ghosah in all these other contexts, it means something more like speech itself, the sound of speech, the invocation of speech. And so obviously Indian linguistics use this example to create, again, to illustrate their own argument while making their argument that this word also means speech. We're going to use it to illustrate a linguistic theory, therefore, and we're going to put it in this context where that ghosah means Hamlet because of the context, even though we're not telling you much, which it also carries the connotation of holy, because the Ganges is a holy river. Everybody knows that. What's around the Ganges is something holy, like a temple. So now we know the Hamlet on the Ganges isn't just any old hut. It's a holy hut, It's set
Mm-hmm.
apart. It's special. So all these resonances are here in just these two words.
Yeah, no, definitely. One of the things I got lost in thought because I was just so focused on reading out about Augustine was the other aspect of that play on words of what is it in Sanskrit? Gosha?
Ghosah.
Gosha is that it also represents the thunder, right?
Right.
The thunder of speech, or like the cry, the roar. This is also important because I do wonder, after you bringing that up, if Lacan had knowledge of that double meaning, because again, addressing the fact that there's a contingency to the signifier versus the arbitrariness, he says, I think it's a version of the subject that it's the child's roar or the child's cry, that elevates the sign to the signifier, that it elevates the thing to the level of the signifier, giving it a symbolic status of indebtedness, of lack, of loss, right? And so this becomes the child's reality, the language and the symbolic articulation that will soon structure it. Fort da, right? That's the kind of what I want to drive home. But that yeah, that double meaning of that word really articulates that other aspect of speech and of language that is important for psychoanalysis. Uh, the demand and the cry of the neurotic suffering that they do not want to convey, but yet it still manifests in the function of language, right?
Right. And so in Vedic texts, that thunder it's like a signifier for the sound of speech itself is something that thunders, right? And so that's why that's here. And I think you're very right to tie this back into the cry, And I remember we started this essay with Lacan mentioning the newborn's cry. That he sees his whole essay here as something like a newborn's cry for psychoanalysis, right? And so it is itself. He's doing the same thing that this phrase is doing. His whole essay is an illustration of itself, of its own argument, And if I think here for a second, like, why does this word gosha, how could it possibly mean a Hamlet and have all these other linguistic resonances like around speech and thunder? I think that really, if we think about it associatively, it's because language is a structure. A Hamlet is a structure. Like, we don't have to think of it so much as like literally the hut, an Indian hut from primordial time. That's irrelevant. It's actually just simply the idea of a very basic structure. Language is structured. It's structured by signifiers, and it's a structured event. And I think this is already clear to Indian linguists, or they wouldn't have come up with all of these concepts to describe all the structural resonances and impacts that are inherent in language and speech. And that's why Lacan is here at all, saying any of this, using these examples, throwing us these clues